Breaking news, and it is the update that no one was hoping for in the search for the missing American college student last seen in the early hours of the morning outside a club in Barcelona. Police have confirmed that the body of James "Jimmy" Gracey has been found. What we know about what happened and the questions still unanswered at this point. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Police in Barcelona in the last couple of hours say they located a body in the water not far from the nightclub where Jimmy Gracey was last seen. And just as we are recording this, police have confirmed that it is the body of Jimmy Gracey. Now, it is unclear how Jimmy died and the circumstances surrounding his death. An autopsy will be performed to confirm that information. Jimmy was last seen around 3 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday outside a club called Foco on the beach in Barcelona. He is originally from the Chicago area. He went to the University of Alabama, and he was in Barcelona visiting friends who were studying abroad, and he was there for spring break. Now, he somehow got separated from his friends who were also at this club. They end up back at their Airbnb, and then Jimmy never returned. And that is when this search began. And then in the early evening hours today in Barcelona on Thursday, Fox News is reporting there was a worker at a marina that sits adjacent to the nightclub that is right on the beach in Barcelona. And that worker flagged down police because apparently they had seen something. That area was roped off. And shortly after, police said they found a body. They put the announcement out on social media that the body was that of Jimmy, and that part of this story was made official. Joining us now to talk about the latest developments in this case is Phil Waters, retired homicide detective. Thank you for being with us. Definitely not the outcome that anybody was hoping for when this story first broke earlier this week, but police in Barcelona confirming, quote, they have confirmed that the person found dead is James Gracey, the 20-year-old boy who went missing on Tuesday in Barcelona. I know that there's been some reports out there that, El Periodico, which is an outlet in Barcelona, saying their sources are saying they believe that this was a drowning. We don't know for sure. What's the process now in a case like this? What will investigators do now that they've confirmed that this body that was found in a marina not far from the nightclub is actually James Gracey?
Well, it's good to be with you, Chris. Sorry it's on such a somber topic, but so what happens now? I'm sure I would imagine the authorities there have already tried to trace his movement. He apparently went missing around 3 a.m. in the morning and was seen talking with a young unidentified female. So now we have the wallet recovery. Now all of a sudden we've got his recovery. And I think the first thing that the detectives are going to look at is, number one, is there any trauma on the body that would suggest that he was murdered? And was this simply tox tests that come back, of course, are going to tell the tale on any level of intoxication and what he was intoxicated on, if he was. So, trying to further explain how he ends up in the water. If there's no signs of trauma on the body and the autopsy doesn't result in anything other than a drowning as the cause of death, then this is certainly reminiscent of the young man in Nashville that left a bar, got separated from his friends, walked down the river, and ended up in the water. And there were some of the things that he had that were found. So that is what this is kind of reflecting at this point in time. It's the same kind of tragedy, just in a different location. And but again, they'll get that cleared up at the autopsy, whether or not this was an accident or whether this was a homicide.
I remember that case in Nashville well, and I also remember there was one last year on spring break, and it was an American college student in the Dominican Republic. And, she ends up going to the beach late at night with a guy, and her body was never found. And I think in this case, I know like where the bar here is located, there's kind of this marina, a couple jetties. So it might be a little bit more of an enclosed area where I think that was more like open water. But how common is it in cases like this that you actually do, especially thinking like you're dealing with the ocean, how hard can it be to find a body typically? And that you have something like this where, apparently it was early evening hours in Barcelona today, a worker at a marina saw something and then flagged police down.
Well, it's it's all about the tides. I have actually been to that port, and those clubs along there. I mean, they are right there on the water. They're I'm sure there's railings and that kind of thing that protect them from it, but we don't know when that body falls in the water, especially on the ocean side of things. It's all about the tides, and at what point in time did they fall in, and then where was it taken, and then where does it end up coming in? And I don't know. I know it's designating a specific beach there where the body was recovered. I do not know what the distance is from the recovery site to that club. So that will be interesting to see. But I think it's and then where was the wallet found? So all of these things they'll be looking at the proximity, putting together a timeline, and trying to explain what happened here to this young man.
Yeah, and I think I'm just seeing now. Here's a statement from the family. I'm just going to read real quickly. We're so grateful for the kindness and concern that has been shown for our family during this incredibly difficult time. We have made the decision to pause media interviews at this time to focus on being together and caring for one another. Thank you for respecting our privacy and holding our family in your thoughts and prayers. We will share updates if and when we're able. You really feel, for this family that had to fly, into, to Europe to try and help find their son, and for this being the outcome at this point. Big clue that came out, and there's still a lot of questions surrounding it, is the cell phone, because somehow law enforcement, when James was missing, his cell phone was found, and reportedly it was found with someone who had been arrested. And we don't know what the circumstances are surrounding that, as far as, maybe it was a pickpocket, which does happen in Europe, as well as a lot of other places around the world. But what did you make of that part of the reporting, and what kind of information might law enforcement be able to get from a cell phone as they try and piece together what happened?
Well, there is a possibility that there may be some sort of documentation, videos, pictures, that kind of thing on the phone itself. Now, the individual that's got it, of course, the big question is, how does he get it, and or he or she? I don't think they've identified the sex of the person that was arrested. So, again, this is all part of the investigation. Is the cell phone in the possession of this person? Is that secondary to what happened to him? And so that will be determined, of course. That person being arrested, I don't know the law in terms of detaining and arresting people in Spain, but that may have been a part of their process, that they're arresting that person, taking them to the police station for an interview. Let's determine where they got the phone from, and then follow the leads backwards from that person that they're interviewing.
This may be, it may end up being a situation where it's a drowning, and he was just separated from friends, and he goes down to the beach, and sadly, it was the early hours of the morning. Don't know if he was intoxicated, was at a nightclub and all of that. This next question, it's hard to ask, but, can you tell that there's trauma just visually looking at a body that's been in the waters since potentially Tuesday? Like, how do you determine if it was a drowning? Just, I know an autopsy will, but what are some of the things that you're able to see on a body when it washes up ashore, like apparently what happened here?
Well, that's a good question, Chris. If there is trauma, when I'm talking about trauma on the body, I'm talking about anything. It could be a bruise, it could be a laceration, that kind of thing. Could be a bullet wound, could be a knife wound. You're looking for, it could be things bruising around the neck area, which would indicate a possible strangulation or a ligature of some kind. So those are the things that they're going to be looking at when the detectives make the scene, looking at it. Is there something that just stands out? And is it something that would be different than, let's say, falling into the water, smacking your head on a post under the water, or a rock, or some sort of hard surface? And so that's going to be much different, of course, than if it looks like there's bruising that was used with a blunt instrument or that kind of thing. So um, and again, those things will be determined at the autopsy. So if you've got uh, a, let's just say, for the sake of our discussion here, you have a blow to the head that is readily visible, then the determination will be to see if we can, what kind of a tattooing effect that may have left. Does it look like it may be an instrument of some kind, or does it look like a blow again to a post, to a rock or something like that, another hard surface? And those things will just have to be determined at the autopsy. I mean, if there's something obvious, a bullet hole or something like that. But I haven't read anything where there's any indication that you know gunshots were heard at that time of the night and that kind of thing. So it just remains to be seen what the autopsy reveals.
It does seem like with some of the reporting, because there was the report that came out Wednesday out of that media outlet in Barcelona that foul play was suspected, and it seemed like they were walking that back today. And it seemed like they were starting to focus a little bit more on the water, starting to hear some witnesses say that they saw him go down to the beach. And then it seemed like it was going in that direction where this potentially could just be a very, very tragic case of a drowning. How much does, like, when piecing together the timeline of all of this, does the what happened before matter if you're heading down that path where it doesn't seem like there's foul play, but you're not trying to rule anything out? He's at this massive nightclub. Everybody, I'm assuming, shoulder to shoulder. His friends, it's unclear what the circumstances were where they decide to leave him, or not leave, but maybe they just get separated and they end up going home, can't find him. Oh, he must have gone with somebody else. We don't know. I mean, if this were to happen in the United States, and I'm sure some of the investigative stuff very similar to what happens overseas, like, how much does that part matter if the end result is this tragic accident?
Well, that's where you start to build the timeline. And so that is going to be important. So they're going to interview the friends. When did he get separated? Who did they see him talking to? Did they know that person? Has that person been identified? Which would again put the timeline into where he was. Did he, in fact, did they have CCTV coverage showing his movements? I know the young man in Nashville, it was on the street, saw him going down the street by himself, headed in a certain direction. Then he went around a road sawhorse that was set up there, obstruction that was set up there. So it won't, because that's such a rather small area. I mean, in terms of where he was, it should not be terribly difficult to put together that timeline. And then when he's down on the beach, if that's what we find out, that he was headed that direction, that would explain why he ends up there. Now, the other thing we got to remember too is the wallet. I'm curious as to where the wallet was found in relation to where the body was found, which may indicate something else. Now, if he went in the water at where the wallet was located, or if he went in the water along the way, and many times when bodies get in the water and it's a drowning and they're moving, the current's moving them through the water, sometimes, depending on how far they go, it will literally take their clothes off. So I know when we had the big flooding in Harvey, and we made every body that surfaced once the water had receded, and there were many of those, and we went out and made every one of them to make sure there were no signs of trauma, obvious signs of trauma. And it was amazing how shoes were removed, pieces of clothing were removed, pieces of articles in their pockets were gone. So that kind of thing. So that may be how this wallet ends up where it ends up. But um, these are all things that will have to be looked at and examined to explain where he went in and where he ended up. And then the results, of course, are going to be revealed in the autopsy.
When a body's been in water for even the 48 to 72 hours that we may be talking about in this case, when it comes to a toxicology test, are you still able to determine what was in somebody's system, even if they've been in that type of environment for that period of time?
I would think this period of time they should be able to get some tox test, some tox results out of that, if not out of the blood itself, but out of the organs, perhaps. So if it's been in there for a long, long time, of course, there's going to be less likelihood that you're going to get an accurate tox test result. So, but I think, given what we know, I think they should get something back that will hopefully reveal if there was any level of an intoxicant at all, and what it may have been. So I think they might be able to get something out of it that will, again, get us further to the answer of how did he end up in the water.
When it comes to the surveillance video footage, because just looking around that area, and I know you've been, to that beach and that spot. I mean, it's not a remote location. I mean, it's a very popular place. When you go to Barcelona, that's one of the places where a lot of people end up going to. How challenging is it to actually go through surveillance video in cases like this? I even think of that case in Nashville, to actually piece together, okay, we have this one person, they're on this street corner. I know for us on the outside, like, we see the finished product when it's released to the media and we just think that it's okay, here's one video to the next, to the next, to the next. Like, what does that actually look like internally when you're starting from scratch? And I'm sure you have hours of footage, and in this case, a very populated area. Like, how do you actually figure out where this person is and where they're going?
Well, that's going to come down to the interviews with the friends. When did they get there? What time was it? How long did they stay there? There's what we've been told is that 3 a.m. is where he went missing, or around that time frame. So you do, and again, this goes back to your timeline. So we've got to start that timeline at when did they leave to go to the club? Did they go anywhere else before the club? Because you want to try to get a track of where they were at the beginning of the night, how they ended up there, and then what happened afterwards. So all of that stuff is going to be, again, I always talk about timelines because that's most important. And in terms of going through the video that may be available, because they're going to be able to establish specific times, that is going to pare down the amount of video that you're going to have to view. So once you get that time frame in, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be minimal, but there may be hours in depending on how many cameras they get a hold of and how much video that they actually have to look at. But I've done it. It's very tedious work, but it is something that's going to have to be done because we want to, this is all about now at this point, it's explaining to the family as best as the detectives can. This is what happened. This is what we believe happened, and this is what caused him to be recovered where he was.
And just a couple more for you, because on that note, if this is a case where there is no foul play, clearly if there was foul play, I mean, you keep investigating until there's an arrest and you figure it out. But like, at what point does, for a department, and in this case, the police in Barcelona, does the investigation stop? Where if there's no foul play, it appears to be a tragic accident. I'm sure the family will have so many questions. But at what point do you as an investigator say, like, okay, this is kind of the timeline that we believed happened. We don't believe that this is a crime. And this is the information we have. And then for you as an investigator, you have to go on to the next case for where there may be foul play. And I'm sure that that's a difficult decision at times in cases like this. But how does that typically work?
Well, it's like any investigation. So the detectives let the evidence lead them where they need to be. They don't take it some direction that they want it to go, and it's always a journey for the truth. So once as they get as close to the truth as they can possibly get, and now we have the ability, we have the evidence that we need to explain to the family what happened. If it was an accident, once this is going to be the ME's ruling is going to be a big deal in a case like this. So, for the sake of our discussion, the ME rules it a drowning, an accidental death.
Mm-hmm.
Once that's communicated to the family, they're going to have questions. The detectives are going to show them everything they've got. I've done it before. It's horrible. It's really tough to do. But I can tell you that every family that I talk to in a situation like this appreciates just a straightforward, honest explanation about what happened to their loved one. And once that is done and the tests come back, whatever processing that's been submitted to a lab, once those things come back, you've got the ruling, you know what you have, and then at some point in time, the case will be closed. There's no other need to keep it open. The leads have been tracked down, and people have been interviewed. Evidence has been gathered, and now we have a conclusion to our investigation. And at that point in time, it will be closed. Now, the other side of that same coin is, if it turns out that he's ruled that he had some sort of trauma that caused him to go into the water, if we've got something that would indicate a blunt force instrument was used, say a club or some sort of like a hammer. I mean, something that has a distinctive mark on it, something that's linear, that was struck in the head with, or has some other kind of trauma on it. Then you're going to have an investigation into who did this thing. If that trauma led to him falling in the water and drowning, that's still a murder. So then it's going to be, the case will not be closed until there is a suspect in custody, someone who is charged, and at least that's the way we do it in Houston. I'm not sure what the process is necessarily in Barcelona, but once you've got a suspect in custody, then it's awaiting a trial, charge, and so forth. So, and then that case will be closed once it's either someone in custody or once it's adjudicated.
Yeah, just a terrible, terrible story, a terrible finish to a case that so many people were watching this week. Phil Waters, retired homicide detective, thank you for helping us break this down, kind of understanding how these investigations go, especially now from here after the news that just came in about Jimmy Gracey. We appreciate your time.
And remember to keep the Gracey family in our prayers.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.